Welcome to the Clemson Dubcast. It is Thursday, June 8th, and whoa, what a week for Clemson recruiting. Even though we thought some big things could happen, I don't think anybody thought this big. And doesn't sound like it's over. So the best way to follow all this, as always, is TigerIllustrated.com. Paul Strelo, been at the forefront of it all. He is a master of somehow keeping his fingers on all the pulses of all these different developments. Sign up right now. You're not going to be disappointed. My good friends Blake Smith and Brooke Archenhold have been part of the podcast since the beginning, way back in August of 2018. They have an accomplished team of personal injury attorneys at Parham, Smith, and Archenhold based in Greenville. They are Clemson people, and their skillful attorneys have decades of experience in complicated litigation matters, taking a special interest in medical malpractice, nursing home abuse, and neglect, car accident cases that have left the individuals involved in serious trouble. For a free consultation at Parham, Smith, and Archenhold, call 864-990-4581 or online at parhamlaw.com. That's P-A-R-H-A-M law.com. Celero Communications, formerly known as Tandem Payment, is a full-service integrated electronic payments provider powered by leading-edge technology. Celero provides a wide array of merchant solutions, simplified payments. They make onboarding, taking payments, maintaining risk management and compliance, and getting support quick and easy. At Celero, they're all about helping you achieve sustainable growth as a business. Taking payments isn't the only thing your business needs. With Celero's solutions, you can manage inventory, sell products and services via social media, schedule staff, track sales, get reports, and much, much more. Find out more about Celero at celerocommerce.com. That's C-E-L-E-R-O commerce.com. When you're ready for a complete renovation in your home or business, open the door to more with Harris Home and Harris Commercial. Their local experienced team will totally transform any room space, from beautiful floor coverings to construction to finished details. Harris handles every step of your renovation process, whether it's a kitchen or living room or an industrial or educational setting, like some of the positively stunning work they've done at Clemson University. Go to discoverharris.com and experience a total renovation transformation from Harris Home and Harris Commercial. Okay, one of the reasons for Clemson's big surge in recruiting, not just this year, but last summer as well, is the addition of Nick Eason, the Clemson alum, who has a hell of a story. Unlike any other life story that he undoubtedly shares pieces of with recruits and players. Back in March, we sat down with Nick for 3+ hours to tell his story from beginning to end for a feature we did at TigerIllustrated.com. And now we're going to roll it out in 3 parts. Part 1 starts right now, the uncut audio from our sit down with Nick Eason.
Let's see. Start from the beginning. Man, I'm from Lyons, Georgia. I always make sure I tell people that it's spelled Lyons, not Lions, Lyons, or Lyons, depending on if you're from there or not. But very small town, population of about, maybe 4,000 to 6,000 people. It's not much going on there. When I was there, it was a Piggly Wiggly. You don't see those too often anymore. And there was a Huddle House, in terms of going out to eat. And then we had a place called, there wasn't a place to go out to eat at there when I was there as a kid. Oh, Dairy Queen. So Dairy Queen and kind of Piggly Wiggly, Huddle House, where you're like two places that you can go and get something to eat. And then you have to travel to Vidalia, which is the neighboring city, if you want some type of $10 all you can eat buffet type style, which is Western. They call it Western Sizzler or Captain's Corner, which is the 2 restaurants, or Shoney's, which Shoney's back then really was not popular as it is now. But small town. So my mother, Iris Wilcox, conceived me at the high school. So something that I've learned, well, she didn't conceive me at the high school, but I was conceived while she was in high school, her senior year. One thing that I discovered, probably, maybe, it's probably after she passed on, but, that my dad and my mom, my dad was coaching and my mom was a senior around the same time.
High school coaching? Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so I haven't confirmed, but if my mom was pregnant in her senior year and my dad was around, like, I don't know if she was pregnant in her senior year, but it was around that time, and he was obviously a young coach just starting out, but I think that's how they met. Now, whether they were together while I was, while she was in high school or not, I don't know. All right. But so I was, that's my mom, single mom, high school. My grandparents were 14. My grandmother was 14. My grandfather was 17 when they got married. They both ended up getting their GEDs, but they had to quit school to just work back then. Like, it was, man, if you had responsibilities came before education. And so they were very blue-collar workers. My grandfather was a mechanic. He was a carpenter, mechanic. He was a pastor. And he was like a jack of all trades. He can do anything. Literally, he could fix anything. Well, I thought he really could. There was not something that he could. He was going to try to work on it himself and repair it before he gave it away or hired somebody to do it. Which back then, I just think, like, really probably couldn't afford to hire anybody. My grandmother was really she was like a. Have you ever seen Medea? Tyler Perry, the Medea. Anyways, if you talk about Medea, people would know who Medea is. My grandma was like a Medea. She was the grandmother that would say anything to anybody, a loose cannon. So that's, if people know my grandmother, they'll kind of come to know, like, where did my personality come from, and that's my grandmother is like the loose cannon. The type of person that if you come to the door and you've gained weight as a man, you're like, oh my gosh, look at you. You almost need a bra. Your titty's so big, that type of thing. Like one of those grandmas that you got to have a conversation with your friend or girlfriend that's going to come in the house like, hey, just FYI, like, my grandma may say something crazy. Don't take it personal. Yeah. Like, but sweet, in the church, both of them were in the church. My grandfather was a pastor. And so, but they took care of me, man. We lived in this pink house, which I've shared on social media before, that had, 4 bedrooms. Well, 1, 2, 3, 4 bedrooms. And because my mom, when I was born, left me with my grandparents, so she went on to college because my grandparents are big into education. So my mom went on to college. She went to Tiff College, which is an all-girls school. She majored in mathematics. And then down the road, later on, once she got into her teaching career, she obtained her master's degree in counseling. And so my grandparents raised me at home, at the house, 4 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. I mean, it was it was probably enough room for a basic tub, a basic sink. I'm talking about just a sink and a toilet. Whatever space that can be confined is enough for you to sit on the toilet. That's how much space is in the bathroom. Just enough for you to turn around, like get in the tub, wash your hands. Like it was like a closet, like very small. And then my room I share with my uncle, who was my brother, my Uncle Vince. But, his name is Julian Holland. And so me and him slept in that room. And then my aunt, who's like my sister, Angie, she slept in another room. And then we also had my great-great-grandmother, who ended up passing when she was like 106. Wow. In another room. And so my grandmother took care of her grandmother, who happened to be a midwife, who was the daughter of a slave owner.
Oh, man.
It was one of those, slave owner, got together, had this child, and, so she was, man, is white looking as you could ever possibly imagine. So my family, at family reunions, you have this group of people who look like, what in the world, like, are you white? Or like, what's your, and then you have people like myself who are very dark skinned, but that's where the fair side of my family, like my great grandmother, all of her daughters, including my grandmother's mother, were all like fair white looking people. And so she was a midwife and she delivered babies. That was her job. Like, so she was born in the late 1800s. And so she was still living. By the time from what I know, she was, get to a point where she was kind of, slow moving in a wheelchair, then eventually in the bed, in the hospital bed at home, that type of thing. But I mean, she lived a really long life. And so, so she was there. And then like, I was the typical kid that was outside barefooted, climbing trees, roaming off in the woods, building playhouses out of wood. I was just outside all the time. I didn't have a PlayStation or a Nintendo. Like I was, either outside making dirt bombs, trying to fight dirt, like, throw rocks, like trying to find water outside a pond or a ditch, doing something like crazy, or, having a dirt bomb fight with my friends, that type of kid. So for me, like, my dad, my biological father I never really knew who he was, never was around, never part of my life, still isn't, to this day. So it was just my mom, my grandmother, and my grandfather, and then my aunt and uncle. And, I mean, man, we had, chickens around the house. We had a chicken, like, coop, but they were, like, in the yard everywhere. I remember we had a goat, we had a swimming pool. I come to find out was a feeding trough for like horses.
And that's where you swam?
That's where it was like a round thing, but it was like a feeding trough for like horses or / cows that we called the pool. And so I told everybody that we have a pool at the house. Like, and I didn't know it was a feeding trough until like I got older, but I thought like that it was a pool to me, and we could slide and move it around as long as it wasn't no water. I mean, wasn't any, water in it. I could pull it and move it around the yard. And
like aluminum or plastic?
It was like aluminum.
Okay.
Yeah, man, and that was our pool. And so we fill it up and get in there, and I mean, life was great. We built our own like utility shed out of tin, house with just whatever we had, I didn't have central heater air like until I got to Clemson. It was box fans in the windows, like and then we transitioned. And then we had air conditioning units in the windows, but like I said, my grandmother and grandfather, they was taking care of myself, my aunt, my uncle, my great grandmother, and so man, you had to be very smart about spending money. And so, generally we would, not run the air conditioning unit, the window unit, unless we had to. So for the most part, man, I just, had the fan. I've, slept on the floor and put sheets over a fan and just create kind of like this igloo of wind, like a wind tunnel, just sleep under that. There were, holes in the floor you could see down underneath to the ground. I mean, which I thought was cool. It was like, that's all I knew. I mean, but I thought it was the best thing ever. Like I had no worries in the world. My grandparents, took very good care of me. Like I said, my grandfather was a pastor. I remember when I first started playing the drums, I was 4 years old. I was playing in church at 5, like service. 5 years old, I could keep beat, and I was just it was natural for me. I don't remember. I never got lessons. I don't know. It's the weirdest thing, man. I just could go and I joined the drums, and like I've always been coordinated. Well, come to find out, my dad. My mom and dad, like I told you, they were never married, never together. Well, my dad was a lead singer for a band.
Okay.
And so he traveled because I started trying to figure out, like, you know, I have 13 brothers and sisters outside of my mom, you know, my mom and dad having me, and my mom ended up getting married, and I have a little brother and a sister, which I'll talk about in a second. But, you know, my dad was a lead singer of a band. He played guitar, very crafty, built his own house, jack of all trades, can sing. And so all the talents and things that I have, like, it's genetic, passing it down, you know, really and truly. And then it just so happened that my grandfather was the same way. He could sing, was part of a group, but he wasn't, you know, he was all gospel group. But he could sing, play the drums. I mean, he could do it all too, you know. And then my uncle, who was raised in the house with me for a short period of time until he obviously, you know, he's about 55, so he's about 15 years older than me. I mean, he was there, you know, with me maybe, you know, 5 years, maybe 6 years, 7 years until he graduated, and then he moved kind of out. You know, both of them. Then my aunt, she left and went on to the military. But man, so my dad was a musician and traveled everywhere, man. And I have, you know, 13 brothers and sisters, some whom I've met just in the last 15 years, you know, and didn't know. But there's like, I mean, if I'm kind of off the top of my head, just Casta, Linda, Tori, Junior, Stephanie, Terry. I mean, it's like 8 different women, you know. Wow. And just over time. And so I was like, man, like, but then, you know, you don't ask. And so as you get older, and I'm like, start trying to piece 2 and 2 together. I'm like, how in the world do you have, like, okay, you got this woman was here, this one's over here, and like they're all spread out over the Southeast, and then you go back and find out the history behind it. Like he was a freaking, you know, lead singer of a band, and they traveled. And so when he goes sing, you meet women, you know, and that's kind of, you know, that was in his younger days before he got into coaching. So because here's the deal, I'm second to the last of that 13. Uh-huh. You know, I'm towards the end. Like I have a younger sister who is, you know, younger than me. I mean, Cassie's probably, you know, 6 years younger than me, so she's probably 35, maybe somewhere in there, 36 now. But I was, you know, right before her. So, you know, we're number 12 and 13. So I'm 12, she's 13. So, but I never knew him. You know, I probably met him maybe once or twice. Growing up as a kid, my grandfather was everything for me, and so, you know, being raised in a, you know, in that spiritual home, like my grandparents never forced religion on me. It was kind of like, you know, but I respected them. You know, I wasn't allowed to be watching, you know, shows that had a bunch of profanity in it. I wasn't, you know, listening to a bunch of rap music out loud or music that had profanity in it. If I did wanted to hear some rap music, I'll put on a headset just out of respect. But they were really cool. Like my grandfather, and they were, you know, they had the moments where they were clowns. They were clowns. My grandma had a big personality like me. Mm-hmm. Grandfather was more reserved, very quiet, pastor, bishop. He did all of that, you know, clergy work. He was, you know, a mechanic. He, you know, detailed cars for a while. He was a pastor. You know, he was the chaplain at the hospital. He was chaplain for hospice. I mean, he was just everywhere, you know, all the time, which is why a lot of people knew who I was, too, before I became what I become today. You know, I was Bishop Holland's grandson. You know, they kind of, it was Holland and Eason, because my mom, you know, my dad signed my birth certificate, you know what I mean? But he was never around, which kind of like, for a while, it was like, my mom, like, why'd you let him say? I'd rather been a Holland. I've never felt like I needed to have a Holland. You know, I wanted Holland until my grandfather passed. And I was like, man, you know what I mean? Like, he deserved, like, you know, the success I've had, you know, I wish my name would have been like Holland. Yeah. You know, and so that's kind of how I felt. But, you know, growing up as a kid and had nothing to worry about, man, I went to elementary school. Back when they paddled people, you got paddled when you did wrong. They would allow, you know, my grandmother, which I didn't want them to call, to come into school and paddle me. My mom was obviously went off to college, got an undergrad master's degree. Got a master's degree in counseling, came back. So she was actually moved with me throughout my school. Like, she was at the elementary school, counselor, teaching there, and then she went to the middle school, counseling, and then she went to high school, counseling / teaching. So,
well, she lived in
Lyons. Yeah, my grandparents. So I live in the house, and then like my mom, she bought a mobile home, and it was like in the same like block of like on the same lot, but in front of the house. So I grew up on it's probably like 7-8 acres, but it's plots. They're plotted off by different properties. You know what I mean? Different plots. If you go to the courthouse, it's plots. Mm-hmm. And so my mom, lived like right in front of my grandmother's, like we call it Pink House. It was the main house where all of us really were raised. And so my grandmother, my granddad and grandfather had 6 kids. My Aunt Vivian, my Uncle Kenneth, Anthony, my mom Iris, and then Julian and then Angie. It was 6 of them. And so my Aunt Vivian was a missionary in the church who actually would practice with me playing the drums in the house. She passed at age 38. She got septic and died in 1989. My uncle Kenneth, we call him Uncle Boo, was in the military, became a chef, worked in Millersville, Georgia. And I always tell people, like, he's one of my uncles I learned, got my toughness from. Really respected my granddad and grandmother. He's dealt with this, ups and downs in his life. Just some addictions. At some point in time in his life. But he was awesome, respectful, best cook you ever known. If there's gonna be somebody grilling, it was gonna be him. Mm-hmm. And so my uncle Tony, same thing, former military. But he was a jack of all trades, man. He cut grass, he could fix things. He could lay concrete. He could, build things. Carpenter. He worked in the fields, and he did everything. Had some addictions as well. And so those 2 uncles really just taught me toughness and grit. That's where I got that from. And my Uncle Vince, too. So then my mom and then my Uncle Vince, who I was raised in the room with, same thing. He's currently my pastor now. But growing up, man, he really just, all about hard work, doesn't drink, don't curse, and just really just was a hard worker. I mean, we worked for sun up, sundown, and he still does that to this day. I think he's 56 years old. Mm-hmm. And and then my aunt, Angie, who's the baby of my mom, and then obviously my mom and my uncle and my aunt Angie, who's the baby of the group. She went off, and so she was gone for pretty much, she left at age 18, and she's been gone ever since, so I don't really see her much. And then so out of all the 6 kids, only 2 of them are living. Mm-hmm. So my grandmother, before she passed a year and a half ago, buried 4 of her 6 children. Wow. So none of my uncles, I don't think, lived past the age of. None of the kids, my aunts and uncles, lived past age 53. My mom died at 50. Like her brother, I think my Uncle Tom may have been 53. My Uncle Boo was maybe 51. My Aunt Vivian 38. My mom died at 50. And then my uncle now, I think, is 56. And then my aunt, I don't really know how old she is right now at this point. But she might be 19 years older than me, so she may be, 50 or just turned 50 or something like that. Mm-hmm. So, and then so, growing up, I played, rec ball, baseball, football, basketball. I actually played quarterback in rec ball. Played running back, tight end. When you're in rec ball, you play everything, every position. And so if you're a coach, you're just trying to win. You want to put your best players in the position to make plays. I remember playing basketball where they would set me down at halftime because I would already have like 35, 40 points at halftime just because I was just so much more advanced. I didn't have a coach, really. I just had I had a man-made basketball goal for one point in time, a piece of wood, and it just – put up a, where you find a rim and you made the back because we couldn't afford to buy one. So you had a piece of plywood, and you put the rim on there, and you just kind of used that as a makeshift like basketball goal. Put it on a piece of a post and set it up there, and that was my basketball goal. And I lived out there. I lived in the yard playing. We used to call this game called Man Get the Ball, Get Busted. And you used to throw the ball up, and whoever caught it, you just run, and people just try to tackle you. And so that's kind of my experience with football. But, man, I football, basketball, baseball, track, you name it. There was nothing else to do in Lyons. That was just it was church, sports, home, and then obviously, as I got older, girls, But, I mean, it was a cool place, man, just growing up there. As I look back, it was peaceful. I learned a lot of things later on in life, like just, that there was like racial tension there. The segregated proms. I think my high school had segregated proms up to like 2004 or 5. They had a black, white, and a Hispanic prom. It was segregated. And
so separate proms.
Yes. Black prom, white prom.
Different events.
Black homecoming queen, white homecoming queen. Publicly. Like, that was... And I thought that was, like, normal.
Yeah.
I mean, it was normal for me back then. Going to cafeteria, black kids over here, white kids over here. I mean, they were... Like, I had a lot of my teammates. I was cool with them. Like, as teammates, they were good people. Good families. And everybody in the whole town is not racist. I mean, you had your people that some people just didn't know what they just didn't know. Like me, I didn't know what I just didn't know, it was a very unfortunate, situation, but, my cousin, my oldest aunt who passed away, Vivian, her son, she had an older son named Gary. Gary was 7 years old. I think this is in 1972. He was walking down the street, and my grandmother. This is going to another story that happened to me. So because Gary walked, 7 years old, man, lady, intoxicated, drunk, runs him over, drags him like 200 feet, like she doesn't stop as she hit him. He's 7, and my grandmother, watched him die.
So she saw this.
Oh yeah, well she didn't see it happen because he was walking across town by himself. I don't know who I don't know if he was present with somebody, but somebody hit him, and so she was there at the hospital when he died. Oh. And so she had told me that was the only time that she ever felt like she hated white people. But she never, my aunt married a white guy, and my uncle has a child from a white woman. So and then my mom, my grandmother, worked with or for a white lady for an extremely long time, who became one of our best friends. They took care of each other. But yeah, she had that experience. And so
was the woman prosecuted?
No.
Nothing?
No.
Just got off. Just shove it on the road. How does that affect? Oh man, I can't imagine.
It's just
can't imagine how you process.
They used to say that tombs were like bloody tombs because it was like you can kill and get away with it down there. But I didn't experience a lot of racism personally. For me, I knew that there were a lot of racial tension around me. I think I got protected, or some of it I didn't see. I heard stories, and I've been part of stories. Throughout my life, like you hear stories like that. Until my sophomore year in high school, I met this young lady who was the daughter of a counselor, and we started dating. And I remember my grandparents. She was, she'd come over my house, but I never could go over hers. And I knew why that wasn't going to work. And so she came to my house and was around my family. Everybody knew who she was, so that it wasn't hidden, but I knew her family didn't know. And then once my grandparents I knew once my grandparents found out that I wasn't allowed to go to her house and that her parents didn't know, they were going to be like, no, this ain't happening.
She's white.
Yeah, she's white. Yeah. They're like, no, we ain't doing this. And so I ended up, so, you know, she had a mom and a stepdad, and then she had a biological father. And so we, once my parents caught wind like that, they were like, no, you need to kind of leave this situation alone. Of course, me being the young, dumb kid that think I know everything, I continued to have a secret relationship with her, got her a pager, and just, you know, back then they had pagers, you know, to page me when nobody was home. It just really just continued to try to see her in the mornings before school, just doing really dumb stuff, sneaking around, trying to meet up with her. And then, you know, when you're starting to become a high school known star, like people know you, they know what you drive and know where you're at. And so it was kind of very difficult to kind of hide. I thought I was hiding, but if you really just been in my hometown, like it was like, what was I thinking? I was so stupid. Right. And so I bought this pager, so her biological father, who everyone was like, man, you need to be careful around that guy, or whatever, man, got a hold of the pager. And so my aunt, he got a hold of the pager, and, you know, I'm paying for it. I want my pager back. And so I set up this meeting, which my grandparents was like, man, who cares, blah, blah, blah. So I set up this meeting to meet him at a gas station in public. So I'm probably freshman, sophomore year. My aunt goes with me. She's actually pregnant with her first child. My aunt rides over there with me. I walk up to the truck, and his son was driving, who actually was one of my like high school baseball teammates. Mm-hmm. Right, his son was driving, and I walk over to the truck, and the guy, the man, you know, her dad asked like, hey, why'd you, I told you to leave her alone. Like, why did you give her the page? I'm like, man, just to stay in contact with her. Why else? In the middle of the conversation, he pulls out a mini like bat and hits me in my mouth, like knocked my teeth out, chipped my bottom tooth. Father. Yeah.
In front of your baseball teammate son. Yeah,
in front of my no. That was his son. I mean, in front of his son was driving.
Right.
And he was on the passenger side, and I was talking to him in front of him. Boom, knocks and then they speed off. And so my aunt's in the car. She gets out. She's pregnant. She is losing her, about to have her baby. And the cops come. My grandma come, and she gets out of the car. I'll never forget this. She was literally like in her hands with her hair, like she was so angry. And so supposedly there was wind that the plan was to hit me, knock me out, put me on the back of the truck, and like take me out in the woods and like kill me. You know. But
your aunt being there.
My aunt may have kind of, you know. Now that was rumored. Now, do I have proof of that? No. But man, the girl was removed from the school. Didn't come back. The rest of high school, she was gone. Man, it was within an hour. It was probably, 30, 40 people at the house. And my uncles, who were a little rough around the edges, were there. My high school teammates were ready to, you know, and there was a lot of tension at the school the next day because of it, you know. And really at the end of the day, I remember my grandmother and grandma, my mom, just telling people to remain calm. Like, you know, it's not an eye for eye situation. Let's not do this. But man, I had to get like 9 stitches in my mouth. You know, I had to get, my 2 teeth had to be surgically replaced. So these are the still same teeth that I had from there. Mm-hmm. And I had a chipped tooth. I don't know if I still do, but I did for a while. I think they fixed it, but I kept it there as a reminder to not trust people. Mm-hmm. And so I became, because of that situation, somebody who doesn't trust people very easily. Just because I was naive. I was hard-headed, don't get me wrong, but I was also naive to the situation. And it really just, I really secluded myself and somewhat stayed away from the idea of, don't judge all people. All people aren't the same. All white people aren't the same. All black people are the same. Because as I've grown and gone in life, man, there are racial white people, racial black people, racial Italian people, racial Greek people, racial Indian people. Like, race is not, it doesn't like has a respect. It goes across all people, But at the time, man, I was like, I lost some like trust in people, just period.
Yeah.
And so, and I think that affected like me as I move forward in life. I just never, like, even to this day, I don't have a lot of friends in my circle. I stay very guarded. I have to. Mm-hmm. And there's other situations in life, I think, that came about that remind me of why you have to keep your circle very small. So that was like my first racial experience. I'm 15 years old, and to go through that was very life changing for me and my family.
No legal involvement?
Yeah, I mean, I think he might have gotten did a day in jail or something, a little bit of time in jail. It wasn't long. It was a very slap. Yeah. It was kind of no big deal.
But they remained in the community even though she didn't continue to go to the high school.
No, yeah, they remained in the community, man. Just kept everybody there were a lot of people that wanted to do some things, man, but we weren't about that. My family, don't get me wrong, I was angry. There's a lot of talk about retaliation, but we just, my grandfather and grandmother and my mom, and it just wasn't about that. So it's just more so the guy gotta take care of it. Now that guy ended up dying, the natural causes, over time, but it was just a bad situation.
If you're in the Columbia or Sumter or PD areas and you're in any way interested in buying and selling a home, commercial property, land, need to consider reaching out to Uptown Realty. They're based out of Sumter and run by a friend of mine, Patrick Enzer, big Clemson guy, used to cover the Tigers in a newspaper capacity, longtime supporter of Tiger Illustrated, longtime listener to the Dubcast. The home buying process should be an enjoyable experience, so let Patrick and his staff do all the heavy lifting. All you got to do is pick up the phone and call 803-774-0435 or go to uptownrealtysc.com. Another loyal supporter of the Dubcast is Blackacre Law Firm in Greenville, a subsidiary of Parham Smith & Archambault. Blackacre helps South Carolina residents achieve their dreams of home ownership by providing experienced professional representation for real estate closings. Attention to detail is crucial in real estate law. Blackacre is committed to making sure nothing gets by them preparing residential or commercial closings. Blackacre also offers estate planning services for their clients in the Greenville area. Find out more about Blackacre at 864-326-3507. Want to share a quick word about Founders Federal Credit Union? If you've been to a sporting event in Clemson, you've probably heard about Founders already. They are the official credit union partner of the Clemson Tigers. In addition to that, all Clemson faculty, staff, and students are eligible for membership as well as IPTAY members. Its office is located beside the Walmart Neighborhood Market on Old Greenville Highway in Clemson. For more information, go to foundersfcu.com.
I was the high school sweep, Mr., football, basketball, everything. I thought I was going to be the next Michael Jordan. Coming up in rec ball, like I told you, they used to sit me out after halftime. I just score 40 points. And then, overtime, I think I finally we got our own basketball goal at home, man. My grandparents really, had, if I look at it today, where I'm at now, man, I just look at they didn't have much, at all. We didn't have much at home. I remember, times where we didn't have, milk and certain things that people, you pour out every day. There were times where I had to use water in my cereal or make a banana sandwich. My grandparents trying to keep everybody afloat and taking care of, people. My grandmother was really, kind of like a house, kind of cleaning lady, which, back in the day they called them slaves, the house cleaning lady, but, she was cleaning houses for people, just trying to take care of me and the house, and keep bills paid. My grandfather was, cutting grass, fixing cars, being a pastor, and detailing and doing weddings and working as a chaplain and just doing things, man. But the Lord just met all our needs. Like, I never went without anything. And, you know, it was, as I look back, like, man, you know, struggling. But for me, it was normal. And I was, like, happy about having a box fan. Like, that was, like, a big thing. I had a box fan in my window. Like, I was excited about that. And, like, not knowing, like this is the lower level of, like, you're on a low level of, in terms of economic status, we are low, you know. And so it was just really like, I'm very thankful for that, because that has allowed me to be who I am today, for having the experiences I've had growing up. You know, but I never was abused, or, you know, I got beat, switches and things like that, but I never had any abuse or felt neglected. Even though we didn't I may not had a lot of things that other kids had or could afford. Like, I couldn't afford to go, like, these kids going to these camps, I couldn't afford that. There's no way my grandparents, there was a way, but I wasn't going to put them in a situation where they would, because my grandmother and grandfather, they would give everything they had to allow me to go somewhere. And I wouldn't even go on to, like, try to ask to put them in that situation to try to, you know, go off and go to a camp. Like, I would never been at a Clemson camp. I never went to, the only way I was able to visit colleges is because some of my other teammates in high school were going to go visit, but I wasn't going to, I didn't want to, there were some times where I was selfish and maybe I wanted some Reebok pumps or just something. And most of the time I would get it because I did work hard in home. I did, you know, help clean. My grandma was the biggest pack rack ever. She used to pack stuff in my room, which is probably why I'm a kind of a little bit of an OCD neat freak a little bit now. But, you know, she was a pack rat, but she wasn't nasty. I said my grandma was a pack rat, but she wasn't nasty. Like, she was clean. But man, she was she would just put stuff. This is my house. And, you know, if you ask her something about where you going, none of your business. Don't ask me where I'm going. I'm grown. You know, it's like, all right, whatever, you know. And so I used to do stuff like get a ladder, climb on top of the house. Like, you pull up, and I would be on top of the house, and you'd be like, hey, what are you doing? And I would just look at you and smile and jump off the top of the house. Like, I was doing stuff like that. I was a boy climbing the trees, jumping off trees, swinging in trees. Like, you would have to find me. You would have to yell to get me home. Like, I was not going to be in the house watching TV, none of that. I was outside. Either I was going to go around the corner and play in, like, the local projects, and where there was glass and stuff out. You know, I had some friends that, you know, didn't live the lifestyles that my grandparents would have approved of. You know, I went through a little phase where, you know, I was going to be cool and you know, used to go to Florida because a lot of my cousins and family and some of my friends even had families in Florida, and they went to the phase where they wanted to put the gold teeth into my mouth. I went through that phase, like I was going to be cool, and that didn't work. I would put some you know, tinfoil, school? In like middle school. Yeah, I was in middle school putting tinfoil, trying to be cool with gold in my mouth. Like, I look back, I laugh at myself. What are you thinking? It didn't last long. Yeah. And I realized, like, man, this ain't me. Like, I'm a freaking preacher's son. I'm a PK, you know. Yeah. You know, and like going to church, man. I love going to church. Not for that I have a relationship with God, because I love music. I love playing the drums at the time. I played drums up until I was like 11 or 12 years old, and the girls loved it, and I loved it. The girls loved it, and so I was, you know, it was like, oh, you know, look at Bishop Holland grandson, he's so cute, blah blah blah. So girls used to come to church, like even when we traveled to other churches, they knew once they heard like Holy Ghost Assembly, which is we were a Church of God in Christ, so it was like Holy Ghost Assembly is coming. They knew that I was going to be there, and so girls would come like from other high schools. Just to, you know, when my granddaddy got up to preach, I'd step out the back door and they would come outside to go to the bathroom and we exchange letters or notes and go back. And it was this cute fun, man. I look back at it now. But man, I went everywhere with my grandfather. And then I think at the age of 13, I started like, I don't know, there was a break for some reason. My grandparents were gone. And my uncle wasn't around, and it took me about a week and a half to learn how to play bass. I have no idea, but I had, and you know this as a drummer, like the bass and the drums work together. And so I had just been playing since I was 5 years old. You know, you're talking about, up to, 7. For the next 7 years, I've been listening to bass guitar. And, I play by ear. And so I can, I know how to get in the right key. I can hear people's voices and find them on my guitar or bass. And so I just, for some reason I knew. And so when I picked up the bass, I watched them so much. I just picked it up, and you pick up a bass, and I fiddle around, But then my cousin, James Harris is his name, and he showed me how to play bass. And so, he showed me, I learned in 2 weeks, and in about a year, I surpassed him.
Really?
I was the dude, And so I can kill a bass guitar even to this day. Now. I have 6-string, 5-string, 4-string. I play them all. And I've played in concerts. I've played neo soul music. I've played for quartet groups. I played for gospel choirs. I've been a part of the NFL gospel choir. I've done it all. To this day, when I go home, if I go home this weekend, hey, are you playing? What are you doing? I heard you're in town. Can you come over here and play here? Or, hey, can you travel with us to play this? I've been asked one time. I went to speaking engagement, and the gentleman was like, "Hey, name is Jarvis Mims, and it's the Mims Singers, and it's a group of women who are knowing it, and they are fabulous." He's like, "Hey, we're playing. How long are you gonna be in town?" And I was like, "Man, I would be honored." And so play for them. I've done it all, and so. I've been, I played at a Super Bowl party before when I was with the Steelers, and nobody even knew that I was playing on the bass, and then went to drums the whole concert because we were, celebration of the Super Bowl. I'm like, oh, Nick Eason. They was like, what? You play drums, guitar? And so I was like, yeah. And so I'm also a barber.
Okay.
You can share that now because so I became a barber because one day, and I'm a person who would try things I have a lot of my grandfather and my biological father genes in me. So I try to fix stuff, and I'm very creative, and I like to move stuff around too. I don't like looking at the same thing all the time. But I like to be different. And so, man, I watched my grandma. She's old school. She'd take a bowl, put it on your head to get it even, and cut it up, edge it around. But she wouldn't fade it in, so you just have a ball and then a bowl haircut, right? But she didn't know how to do the fade, and so, man, she came home one day. I was gonna, I think I made with my brother or somebody, and she told me, she's like, if you messed it up, I'm gonna beat you behind like that. And so here I am, I'm a cut, and I'm I done got started, and so. When my grandmother said that she was gonna beat you, that wasn't a threat. That was going to happen.
Yeah.
You were going to get beat, which is something that I probably if I talk to my players, if I say that you skip class, you're going to run. You're going to run.
Yeah.
I'm gonna run you. I'm gonna get you at some point in time. And so I'm in there cutting, and I did a really good job. And so I just kept cutting, man. So I became a self-made barber. And that's how I made money when I got to Clemson, by cutting players' hair. I got sick of doing it because, guys would be in my room the night before games. They wanted haircuts. And even though the money was good, I was up instead of resting, cutting hair all night. And so when I got to the NFL, I didn't tell anybody I knew how to play. Not play, but I know how to cut hair. Nobody knew how to play. I'm a musician. Because once people found out I was a musician, they wanted lessons.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's but I'm self-made. I don't read music. I can read guitar music. I can read sheet music for a guitar or bass, but I don't know how to read music. I can play by ear, which I think is more fascinating for me too, to be able to do that, to be able to hear and then play it back. And so, it was, I had a good childhood. I had never, and being raised by my grandparents, my grandfather, I've had a lot of death in my life. I think the first funeral I ever went to was a lady, a young girl who had a crush on. Now I'm like 8 years old, 7 years old, and this girl who I had beautiful long hair that I love so much, man. Her and her mom were walking, and somebody hit them, and so that was the first like funeral I had been to, and I was just like, you know, because I was with my grandfather, went with him everywhere because I was a musician, I played, and so that really done something to me. Like, that's why I was like, I don't take young kids to funerals because that just mentally, like that vision is still in my brain. I'm 42 years old, and I remembered that, like for the rest of my life, like the first time, like holy smokes, like this is death. This is what they look like when they die. And man, that just did something to me, and you know, just like visually, like remembering that now. But man, life is good. No, everything was push lawnmower. We lived on 4. You got to push it, like so. No zero turns, no riding lawnmowers, just pushing everything. You know, I become addicted to food and had a lot of struggles with my weight because like my grandma was the best cook ever, made the best pancakes you could ever. Like when I came home, it was full course buffet every single meal. Like what you want, and that was it. It was grits, eggs, bacon, pancakes, grits casserole. I mean, it was amazing. And you know, I remember my grandfather, and my uncle hit a deer one night. They brought it home and gut the deer out, clean them on the spot, chop them up. Put him in there. It didn't go through like no deer process, and we couldn't afford that. Yeah. You know. But man, life was good, man. I don't like have any, like I don't, you know, people have abuse, you know, but I think I had trust issue and trust people very well, but I was so used to being like I was leader of plays. I was in a choir, you know, I did all my speeches, and so like being in front of people and having to speak just comes natural to me. Just even being the son of a preacher and being the son of a school teacher on top of those, like I never got stage fright in front of people whatsoever. Always been a little bit of a, you know, I was a class clown, but at the same time when it was time to work, it was time to work. Mm-hmm. I've had a friend of mine, childhood friend who killed a dude over $75. Come to school the next day, standing in school in the hallways with us like no big deal. You know, I've had friends of mine that have been locked up for an extended period of time for selling drugs. I've had a brother who's done some time and dabbling into some, you know, drugs. You know, but I never got involved with that stuff. I had an experience with my uncle, one of my uncles, who shot up heroin in front of me, needle. And he didn't do it. He didn't bring me in the room to do it in front of me. I just happened to be at his house, and I walked in on him. Mm-hmm. And I mean, he had the needle in, so he can't like rip it out. And I sit there, and he didn't tell me to get out. He just looked at me and said, "If I ever catch you using drugs, I'll kill you." Mm-hmm. Like that. Like even though he knew he was in the wrong, they made sure that like we're gonna do this stuff, but you can't.
How old were you?
Oh, I was like 7 years old, and walking in on him. Like shooting over heroin in his arm, and he's like, "You can't do it." Yeah, but I say, if I ever see you doing drugs, I'll kill you. And so I've never got involved with drugs in my life. And so those are like, you know, powerful moments, you know, going through that, which was just like, man, you know, as I look back, like, man, how did I, you know, survive? Man, I was just thankful for. I always talk about being thankful for the ice in your teeth, man. I was thankful. I miss those days, honestly. I mean, I've lived in a lot of nice homes. I've driven a lot of nice cars. I've never stayed in a place that have central heat or air. But I mean, sometimes, man, I miss that peace. I miss the people from back then because those were some of the best times of my life. And I couldn't afford the things that I'm wearing now and the cars that I drive and the places I go, as much as I travel. And in no way. But I was at peace. I had a peace of mind, and I didn't have, you know, deal with some of the stress that I've dealt with over the last, you know, 15 years or 20 years of my life since I left home. But I mean, it was good. You know, I didn't have my grandfather and my grandmother were so my mom I called mommy, and my grandmother I called mama. And so my grandmother was mama and my grandfather was daddy. And I didn't know my biological father. And I never really missed him or never really even cared because my grandfather filled the void. Now, my uncle, Vince, and then I had my friends, my neighbor next door, John McManus, John, I call him John. And then Marion Nicholas was my other young friend. It was just like us three. We grew up together, and man, we just played together every day. I mean, and then that was just life for me. We never really fought much. I never fought them, but we just kind of stuck together, and we woke up every day. I come to their house, they come to mine, and and you just living life. You kind of. My grandparents are gone, but all of us had really good parents. They all knew each other, respected one another, man, just blue-collar working people that just went to work every day. And we never really got into nothing crazy, I've done silly stuff like stuck my hand on an exhaust of a lawnmower when I was like 6 years old and burned myself, just because, that's just me. Like, I was just into stuff as a kid. Like, I was not a follower. I was definitely a leader, alpha. When I look back as a kid, like kids wanted to be with me. They want, where are you going? I'm coming with you. And so kids are always flocking and wanting to try to hang out or just try to be around me since I was younger. That I look back at it now. Mm-hmm. But man, I was, funny, very mischievous, very sneaky, very, pranks. I was just, man, I remember riding around with my friends and we throw smoke bombs and open people's door, open your door and throw a smoke bomb here, smoke your house up.
People you didn't know?
Yeah, right. Take off on the bicycle.
That's worse than putting your hand on a lawnmower exhaust.
Oh, man. So, I tell you, so, man, that experience I explained earlier with the young lady and the dad is probably the worst thing in high school. And then in the segregated proms, man, that was just so messed up at the time. But I didn't know that. Like, that was so normal. Like black prom, white prom, black and white homecoming queens.
Yeah. So in the moment, it doesn't affect you at all. Only later when you start to
when I got here, man, it was like I had a white friend from New Jersey, right? And she's like, "Hey, my parents want to meet you." And I pause, and I'm like, "Your parents want to meet me? Why?" I'm asking all these questions, and keep in mind what had happened, I'm like questioning her, like, why, and she's like, "Man, what is with you?" And I'm like, I told her the story, and I'm like, "Hey, where I'm from, like, I had white friends that were my teammates, and I got along with them well. I had white friends in school, and the few white females that I did talk to had their own lines in their room, and their parents didn't know that they conversed with me. And they were not women that I was trying to pursue either. They were just friends, but they had to sneak to, like, talk to me. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I get to Clemson, and they're like, your parents will meet me for what? And I had been like so consumed in the world I had been in that, I was like uncomfortable with doing that. I mean, but I was, because of the environment I had been in, like I was just, and what had happened to me, I was just so comfortable. Not that I didn't have anything against anybody, but I was just like, I couldn't believe that. And I remember that when I was 13, my aunt, 13 or 14 years old, my aunt went off to the military. She was in the Air Force, and we drove to, I think, Montgomery. There might be a military. She was stationed there somewhere. It's a military base in Alabama somewhere. We drive over there, and I get to the front door and knock on her door, which is what I thought was her door. A white guy opens the door, and I'm like, "This is the wrong house." And like that, it was my aunt's boyfriend who she ended up marrying. Mm-hmm. But like to see a white guy come to the door, I'm like, "Wrong house." And he's like laughing, but he was from, D.C. Mm-hmm. And he introduced me to like hip hop music, like Tribe Called Quest, Pharcyde, and I really love music. And so I never listened to like Pastor Troy and all this other, Master P. Like I never got into that. I was into like Pharcyde and a lot of underground hip hop and music that had a lot of melody and stuff to it, that really had a lot of lyrics that talked about life. not about killing, stabbing, and shooting, which is what a lot of people were into at the time. It was more about like life, you know. But yeah, I got here, and so I got to Clemson, and man, you know, it was, you know, wasn't a culture shock for me because my school was probably, you know, it was probably 70%, probably 60-40 white to black. Here, it was like 1.1%.
Yeah.
And that was the athletes. Oh man, but I had the best time of my life, man. I never experienced anything racial when I was here at Clemson. And you know, and racism will always forever exist on so many levels everywhere. I mean, it ain't just here at Clemson, ain't in Georgia, it's in California and New York too, you know, on so many different levels. But when you are in that environment, in that world that I was in, you kind of get caught up into those conversations all the time, right? But man, here it was good. I lived with, I think Matt Shell was my roommate, who was the quarterback for a very short period of time, and then I moved in with Bryant McNeil, and who I'm still friends with today. I remember being late for a practice when they overslept. I alarmed at golf, and Tommy West up down the whole team, 100 up down the whole entire team at the practice. I ran for weeks because the back Hazen was still big time back then, and they beat the you know what out of you. I mean, they called it scoop. It was like scoop, scoop, scoop. And I never knew what that was. And I'm like, what is school? And they're like, oh, you're going to find out. And I'll be like, you know, me, I was like a hothead. I'll be damn, you know, I ain't finding out nothing. But, man, I was, you know, I got in a fight the first day I got here. And I don't even know, like, if you had met me, I was like a preacher's kid. But I got a switch, you know. And it's just, you know, I've never been like, you know, I don't argue with women. Like, I'm not going to be the type of like getting a whole argument with somebody, you know, female. But men, oh, let's go. You know, I'm all for that. You know, man, that's just, and I think it's just because I have so much respect. I mean, that's the way I was raised. And I have so much utmost respect for my grandmother, and my mom, and my aunts, and, you know, all the people that poured them in, the missionaries at our church. You know, my church was like you know, people are shouting, speaking in tongues, falling out, passing out. It's one of those, you know, it's like 45 minutes of hit training. People are moving, speaking in tongues. It's like a freaking Holy Ghost club, you know. It's entertaining for sure. You will not be going to sleep. Your eyes will be like, your eyes will be everywhere. Funny story. This literally happened. I was playing on the bass one Sunday, and a lizard comes in the church. It's a lizard or a rat. I think it was a lizard. So I'm in a corner, in the musician corner, so the lizard goes into like where our missionary set. If you walk in the church, missionary set to the right, deacon set on the left. And all of a sudden, like service is going on, like we're playing in the middle of a song and people are praising the Lord. And all of a sudden you see all the missionaries like this, like they like this stuff, like all their feet are moving. And you can see where the lizard was at, because people were like, oh, you know, like moving and all that. And so my uncle was at the pastor at the time. He got up. He's like, man, I thought the Spirit of the Lord was moving, and it's a lizard in the church, because he's seen the people like go crazy.
All right, wow. This guy's one of a kind, Nick Eason is. Hope y'all enjoyed that. We will provide part 2 next week. I think we'll do parts 2 and 3 next week, so stay tuned for that. Appreciate the support of our sponsors. Also, most of all, thanks to each and every one of you for hitting that play button. Cheers.